Welcome to the Humans Outside podcast, where we are building a life around getting outdoors through learning from fascinating outside-minded guests. I'm Amy Bouchatz, a journalist originally from the beach in California, now working to love nature from my home in Alaska. Since September 2017, I've spent at least 20 consecutive minutes outside every single day, no matter the weather. On this show, we hear from others who make heading into nature just a part of who they are while we work to do the same. If you love what we do, you can support Humans Outside on Patreon or leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Ready for the good stuff? Let's go. If you've ever visited a national park's bookstore or visitor center, you might have noticed a little wooden kiosk with a blue book, a stamp pad, and a stamp or two where a few visitors eagerly first examine the date on the stamp before opening their own blue book, finding a specific page, and inking and pounding the stamp. What you're seeing are park cancellation stamp collectors, part of a group of enthusiastic people like yours truly, who use the stamp program to mark which national park system units they've visited around the U.S. All of the 423 official national park units have stamps associated with them, but there are far more than 423 stamps, as many units have more than one, stamps that are unique to a specific visitor center or area at the unit and only available at one specific stop, stamps that roam with the rangers, or stamps that are retired. For many users, finding the stamps or knowing where to look is a big part of the fun. It's so fun, in fact, that the National Park Travelers Club was founded in 2004 by park enthusiasts to help them find the stamps and share their park visiting love. Dues-paying members can have access to the glorious master list, which contains all of the locations of the park stamps and is crowdsourced by actual users. I cannot even tell you how much I nerd out about this, which is why I'm so excited to have Yvonne Manske on with us today. Yvonne, who joined the club in 2009, is its current president. And she's going to tell us all about the park stamps, the program, the club, and her own park's journey. Yvonne, welcome to Humans Outside.
Thank you for having me, Amy.
Okay, so I'm really excited to nerd out with you about this today. We've talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but before we get started, we always ask our guests to take us to their favorite outdoor space as if we're hanging out there having a chat. So where are we with you today?
I have to say my favorite space is out on the ocean. I love to spend time sailing and cruising. I've been on 10 or 11 cruises now, and I think I mentioned to you in my bio that I did that sea semester program as a college student. And there's just, the sky is so big, the open, it's not even like camping. It's just amazing.
It is. I can picture exactly what you're talking about. Maybe we're looking at a rainbow. Who can say?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So tell us, though, what was your first encounter with the park cancellation stamp program?
My first encounter, I wasn't actually a stamper back then. I remember getting my stamp. I stamped a postcard at Scotts Bluff National Monument in 1998. And I have looked for that thing for so long because I didn't really start stamping really until like right before I joined this club. So that was like 2008, 10 years later. So I really longed to find that first stamp, but I think I may have mailed it and I may never see it again. So but that was my first kind of encounter with the program. And I really didn't, I remember stamping, but I didn't, collect books or any of that kind of stuff back then. But yeah, that was my first time.
And how did you go from I stamped a postcard that I can't find to I'm the president?
Well, it's funny because I volunteer for the Park Service here in DC. The National Mall and Memorial Parks. Every year we have the Cherry Blossom Festival, and I was a volunteer, and I was working in the welcome tent, and somebody came over with their book, and they're like, "I need the stamp," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, I need the Cherry Blossom stamp, and they only put it out usually for the festival. It's a special, special festival stamp.
Mhm.
And so they showed me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to have one of those. And so I ran over to the tent next door and bought a book and stamped mine. That was the first time. And after that, I kind of went, the National Mall is all the memorials around here. We have like millions of stamps, it seems like you can get at all
Mm.
different places. And so I started going around and collecting the stamps. And I was like, you start to wonder, and I think that's how a lot of people find our club. You start to wonder, maybe people know of where all the stamps are, or there's a list somewhere.
Hmm.
And so I started looking for that online, and that's kind of how I found the club. And when I joined the club, they were planning their first convention, and that I went to in 2010, and it was due to come here to DC in 2011.
Hmm.
And so I started, talking to them about helping plan the convention, and I got way into the conventions, and being in the club, and I said, I'd like to get on the board, and I'd like to try to get involved with some of this stuff. So that's kind of how I got there.
So I desperately want to know what happens at a park stamp convention, but we're going to come back to that in a minute. Because I want you to first tell us, if you don't mind, about the stamp program. Just, if somebody has no idea what we're talking about, or they've just seen the cancellation stamp in passing, what is this? Give us a little history of the stamp program.
Sure. So the passport stamp program was started by a company called Eastern National back in 1986. They're actually celebrating their 35th anniversary. And, I mean, we're not really affiliated with them or the Park Service. So, I can't really speak on their behalf, but
Hmm.
my basic knowledge is that they did it as a way to try to get people to visit some of the parks that, most people don't know about. I mean, you go to the Grand Canyon or you go to the Yellowstone or something like that. Actually, I was out at Bryce Canyon one year, and we talked to the guide, and he was like, our visitation here is like, maybe 30,000 a year, which is like one weekend at the Grand Canyon. So
Right.
some of these places, they don't get a lot of visitation. And I think that Eastern National runs most of the bookstores for the parks on the Eastern coast and out towards the Midwest. And there are several other park associations that run bookstores across the country. But Eastern National produces most of the park stamps, or pretty much all of the park stamps. I mean, parks can get their own kind of stamps, but they produce them for all the parks, and they produce them for anniversaries, like their
Right, right, right,
their
right.
anniversary and all that.
Okay, so the I just want to like scene set for people. There are malts you can buy from Eastern National on their website. Um, a one of the blue books that you might have seen at a national park. There's also a larger expanded edition, like a binder sort of situation. And they recently have introduced some additional products. Because yes, guys, I am a stamper. My my book now has a leather case that I'm really excited about.
Yeah,
And I discovered when we went to a park last year that they now have like stamp sticker sets so that you can stamp a sticker if you forget your book, which I confess I do quite often,
right.
and then use that. So there's like a bunch of products around this, but at its most basic, you have this passport. It has pages. It's divided into regions, and the cancellation stamps go in the different regions. There's also like stickers area in here. What's up? I've never understood that. What is up with
So
that?
what they do is they every year they solicit photos,
Mm,
and the photos they have to be, usually they solicit it among the National Park Service employees and volunteers. And so you can submit a photo for the contest, and they select photos. And sometimes if they don't get submissions, they'll just take a stock
sure.
photo. But they produce those sheets every year. Usually they
Mm.
come out in like January, February. And I actually have two pictures that I've taken that were
Oh,
submitted
cool.
as a volunteer that are on some of those stickers.
That's cool. And you
And
can put those in the book as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yeah. But I think they just take up space that I could be putting cancellation stamps, so I don't do that.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because we have people in our club who will seek out the people who took the photos because they
Oh,
know they are either Park Service employees or volunteers and get them to autograph the sticker.
that's cool. That's kind of
Yeah,
fun. That's really
yeah.
fun. Well, I decided early on that though I was a card carrying member of the Travelers Club, something that my husband made endless fun of me for, a bridge too far was the giant binder with the carrying strap. So
And I have three of those, so
yeah, so I cut myself off, Yvonne. Like
I
I was
might as
just
well
like,
burn down the bridge.
yeah, that's well, you got to go big or go home. And I can respect that, you know. So I decided to cut myself off and keep the little book, but that meant I had to not do the stickers, you know. You have there has to be
Right.
a line to make room for things, you know what I mean? Anyway, okay. So, how many stamps are in circulation? Or just maybe even a ballpark.
I was trying to actually I was cheating on you a little bit here and trying to email my IT guy because he was supposed to send me the numbers on that. But I mean, I'm going to take a guess and say it's probably in the thousands somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
kind of what I thought.
I mean, like I said, it's everything that they put out, and it's everything that we call some stamps like bonus stamps when the
Mhm.
parks just get something that Eastern National didn't produce, and so they're just, and you can get them for, it's not only for the parks, you can get them for affiliated areas like heritage areas or national trails, national historic
Right.
trails. So,
Right.
it's beyond, um, way beyond anything that
Yeah.
you can even imagine.
Yeah, and I know you have members who have gotten as I mean, as close to them all as one can.
Yeah, yeah, we do. We have members who have thousands of them because they've been collecting since the beginning.
Yeah.
And we keep a database. We have one of the big draws for our club is we have a master database, and we probably, from what my IT people told me, we have about 99.7% of them have been crowdsourced, confirmed.
Yeah.
And we have images of all of them and everything. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's very thorough. My husband thinks it's crazy, but I think it's cool. So,
yeah,
we'll let
if you
listeners
can imagine,
decide
they
for
used to keep that
themselves.
on paper. They used to keep a
Yeah.
physical list. So,
Yeah, I can't imagine. And I've printed out sections of it because, we were
yeah,
going
it's a
somewhere
lot.
there wasn't reception and I wanted to get my stamps. Okay. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and they've branched out into things like stamps that they have at ballparks and
hmm.
other stuff beyond, even beyond the Park Service in our database. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I found the club very similar to you. Or to I think to how you mentioned a lot of other people found it by Googling, kind of looking for where I could find stamps
yeah,
in the area around me when we lived in Middle Tennessee. And I'm not a member now, but at the time I joined immediately. And as I've mentioned, my husband made fun of me, particularly when my membership card came in the mail. He's like, "You have gone to the bad place." Okay. Because he knows I'm like super type A. And that, I mean, that can happen. Okay. But I did not care. I was hooked. So I'm, as I'm gathering, I am not the only person. So talk to us about what it is about this program that hooks people. And so, like, let's sell it to a little bit to the people who are listening, being like, ooh, you guys are nuts. Why should they do it? Why?
well, I think for some, I think it varies for some. I think some people do it for the thrill of the hunt,
That's what I
to
like.
find that elusive thing. I mean, we have this thing in our club called the most wanted list, and it's a list where there's stamps that haven't been confirmed in a long time, and
Hmm.
people will try to hunt them down and try to find them, and we have like a little certificate, a little award that you can get if you find one of them. And
Because they let's talk about why that happens. They I mean it's a stamp, right? You can stick it in your pocket. I'm sure they walk off sometimes. Um,
sometimes, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's because they somebody might say that they don't really like, we have stamps in DC where it's like, DC being District of Columbia. Sometimes they'll put DC and sometimes they put D.C. And
mm,
maybe who's ever in charge of the stamp doesn't like that it's D.C. And so they'll order a different one that says DC, and then you don't see
mm,
the D.C. anymore.
mm-hmm,
But those types of little things are, as far as our database, are considered different stamps. So,
right.
they'll be listed as nobody's found them in a while. And so, and then, we've got people who they'll go and they'll ask the rangers to go look in some drawer in the back room, like you said, and they'll pull out stuff that nobody's seen in a long time. And the dates may be no good anymore, because usually the stamps, I think they run them for 8 or 10 years or something like
Mhm.
that. And then
Mhm.
the dates aren't good anymore. So they have to get a new stamp. And maybe the new stamp that they get is different. Maybe it says memorial spelled out or MEM or something like that.
Mhm. Or
So
spelled wrong.
yeah, I mean, that happens too.
Yeah. Yeah, like an error. Like,
Yeah,
it's just like a postage stamp, right? Sometimes there are mistakes.
sure, sure.
And then I imagine, because this is one of the things I liked about it, like it's taken me to some really interesting places that I may not have visited. I imagine that that's true too.
Sure, absolutely. I've definitely been to some places that I don't think I would have ever visited there if I wasn't, happened to be looking for a stamp.
Yeah.
Or, just found out that there is a place to go to, whether I actually got the stamp or not.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, I think also there's a lot of people who they think it's great, for the memory,
Mhm.
especially for if they have kids, they get their kids into collecting them. And, we just actually, every year we give away lifetime achievement awards. And we just had some people last year, 15 and 16-year-old kids with their parents who achieved the platinum level of going to all of the parks. And
Wow.
they're only 15, 16 years old. So, they're the youngest people we know of who've ever
Right.
done it. But it's something that I think that's great to kind of get the kids into it. They get to stamp their books and stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah. My kids like to stamp their face.
oh no, that's probably not good.
No, no, then they're canceled. What can I say? No, that's not how that works. I confess that I love the treasure hunt aspect of it. And if you use that master list, you can roll into a very specific visitor center in any given location and ask for a stamp in such a way that the park ranger might think you're crazy. So, for example, I went into a visitor center in Smoky Mountain National Park, and politely said to the ranger, "Hey, I hear you have," and this was based off of the master list. "Hey, I hear you have a Dollywood stamp in a red bag in the drawer to the left of the register." And they did not. It had walked off. But then the ranger was even more into it than I was. I was like, never mind, right? And they're like making phone calls and calling Cheryl, like, "Hey, Cheryl, you were here the other day. Did you see the stamp?" And on and on
Yeah,
and on. I loved that sort of camaraderie, right? Because they knew what I was looking for, but they hadn't seen it recently, you know.
sure.
And I never did find the Dollywood stamp, by the way. Sad day. What
Yeah,
do you do?
and we have rangers in our club. I mean, the rangers that join our club. I mean,
Yeah.
they are into it as much as we are. So a lot of times they'll go out of their way to find things that you're looking for. And then there are some of them that are annoyed by it too when people walk in there with our list. Right? Oh no, you're one,
Yeah.
you're one of those people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that. The other thing I really like is that, as I mentioned before, it sort of pushed me to visit areas of the park that I may not have made it to because I knew there was a stamp there that I wanted to get, but you don't get the stamp unless you go to the place.
Right.
I can think of several examples of this. We rode the train in Cuyahoga Valley National Park because there was a stamp on the train. I
Yeah.
mean, what a fun experience. I'm so glad we did that. But I don't think I would have spent the money to ride the train if I hadn't been looking for the stamp.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and then,
Amtrak actually has a partnership for that. They do it on a lot of their lines.
yes, I've heard that now. You know,
Yeah, the Trails and Rails program. We have one here. The Northeast Regional does it usually. They
cool.
haven't been doing it, of course, because of the
Yeah,
pandemic, but normally they run one group up to New York and the other group back from New York, and
yeah.
they have a stamp on the train.
And I've seen
So,
some beautiful places, a national battlefield or two that I would have just been like, no reason to go there, right? But there was a reason. It was beautiful.
yeah.
It's a part of our heritage, and I got my stamp. So tell us, where have you gone that you went to particularly because of a stamp? And what is your most favorite part of those adventures? And maybe your least favorite as well?
Um, Well, the one place I always tell people that I ended up in is actually fairly close to here. It's out off of and unfortunately it's closed now. So I hate to
Mm.
bring up the story because you can't go there, but um, there's a place called Claude Moore Colonial Farm off
Mm.
of the GW Parkway, and it's like this old tobacco kind of farm. And they have to had association run it, and they didn't renew the contract with the
Mm.
Park Service or something like that. But basically, they had these reenactors who would play the parts of these old tobacco farmers, and they were so incredible. Like they got so into it. Like I really don't know if they're working on their SAG cards or what, but it was incredible how much these, like some of them were younger kids, they were,
Mm.
13, 14-year olds or whatever. And my boyfriend and I were just so impressed. We're like, and they didn't break character or anything. They were like, we were like, oh, when are you going to take they were talking about walking like 10 miles to take their tobacco to Georgetown or something like that. And we're like, oh gosh, these people are really into this.
Yeah.
And they used to have a big fall festival every
Mm.
year where you could go out and you buy like a big turkey leg and stuff like that. I mean, it was really, really an incredible place to go to. And I don't think I ever would have went there if I hadn't seen that on the list
Mm.
as having a stamp. But I
Yeah.
have to say my favorite park that I've been to so far is Mesa Verde.
Mm.
And we did the climb up into the Pueblo dwelling, and that was really cool. My boyfriend couldn't do it because they had this. When you go to get your tickets at the visitor center, they have this box out on the porch, and they say if you can't fit through this box, you can't take the tour because you won't be able to get out the exit hole on the other
Yeah.
side. And so he couldn't. His shoulders were too broad. He couldn't fit through the box, so he couldn't do the tour. So he stood on the observation deck and took pictures of me doing it.
Yeah.
And it was just really that was probably the coolest thing that I'd done at a park before. And I mean, I've been out to Alaska and all kinds of
Yeah.
places, but I just thought that was really cool that you could go up in there to
That is
and
cool.
they didn't have ladders, they just climbed the side of the mountain back,
Yeah.
in the Pueblo time. So
That
yeah,
is cool.
it's crazy. So
What
I thought that was really cool.
where is somewhere that you've gone that you were like, "Oh, why did I waste my time doing this?" But I got my stamp. So, do you have anywhere like that you've done?
I don't feel like I've ever been to a place to where, I mean, we went to a place, we went to Russell Cave in Alabama.
Mm.
And I don't know, maybe we got there too late. we we couldn't do much, but it really didn't seem like so much. And I hate to say that about any park unit because I think that they all offer something,
Yeah.
to see and something to do. And we got there kind of late in the day and they're like, okay, take this trail out and you'll see the cave. And it was like, okay, this is it. I mean, it was like,
Right.
it really wasn't that much. And we're like, okay, I was expecting a little bit more than this,
But you got
um,
your stamp.
but the funny thing, I'll tell you a funny story about that. I used to volunteer in the Trails and Rails during the
Hmm.
Trails and Rails here in Northeast Regional. And I got on the train with someone who was also a volunteer, um, but was became a ranger
Hmm.
and was a ranger at Russell Camp at
Ha!
one point. And we got talking about that story, and he was like, "I've never talked to anybody who's actually been."
That's
So
really
it was a
funny.
really funny story because I was like, "Wow, small world."
Yeah. Was he underwhelmed as the ranger?
I don't know. I mean, we didn't really get into it that much. We were just kind of small talk. But I think that he just thought it was funny that he had never really like
Yeah.
met anybody who had actually visited there.
Hey humans, just a quick break to tell you how you can support the Humans Outside podcast. Did you know we're on Patreon? Patreon allows fans like you to support the podcast through a monthly pledge. By pledging a little cash each month to support the Humans Outside podcast, you can have access to my bonus features, guides, discount codes, and an exclusive episode on... You know what? Actually, just go check it out. You'll also get my eternal gratitude, of course. Check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/humansoutside. That's patreon.com/humansoutside. Now, back to the show. talk to us about what is the most difficult to get stamp that's currently in circulation. So not of one of the stamps that's on the most wanted list or, in a bag to the left of the drawer if you happen to be there on the right day. What's the most difficult to get stamp?
I mean, I guess I would have to say, some of the special event things, like I
Hmm.
mentioned, the Cherry Blossom Festival. We have another one for 4th of July, the National Independence
Hmm.
Day Festival. And supposedly they're not supposed to put them out except for those events. So if you're not on the mall on 4th of July, you're
Right.
not supposed to be able to get the stamp. But sometimes, people sweet talk them into getting them out of the drawers, and get them anyway. But I would say that that should be one of the hardest, ones to get. But I've only been so far to 142 of the units,
Hmm.
and I'm sure there are people who have been to all of them that can tell you that trying to get to the northern Alaska parks is,
Right.
it's bush plains and all kinds of stuff like that, and you want to get to Nome and stuff. It's not easy.
No, it's not.
And
No,
people
and
who've done it have told a lot of stories about that.
I mean, I live here and I haven't done it, and
Yeah,
I love getting the stamps, but it's very expensive. It's just not a top priority right now.
yeah. And a lot of our stuff is on the honor system.
Right.
Our
Exactly.
lifetime awards are on the honor system, so people count their visits in different ways. Some of them are hardcore about I have to step into the park and the preserve, or I don't count both of them. So
Right.
it's it just depends on, and it's not just Alaska. I mean, they have stamps at parks in Guam and
Sure.
American Samoa and the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. Some
Yeah.
places are just they're a long trek,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
a lot of people.
But that's part of the point, right? Like I am giving myself it's like getting a gold star or checking something off the box, right? The stamp is for as a reward for me to having worked really hard to get to this spot. To have experienced this thing, to have been intentional about doing this, to have absorbed this experience in a way that I would not have done necessarily. And I came here in search of this stamp, but it was the journey that made it worth it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think everyone should stamp. Get with it.
Absolutely.
So I know because I have talked to some rangers about this, right? Like, talk to me about the stampers. How does that go? But I know that there's some good stamp collecting behaviors and some not very good ones. So, what is good stamping etiquette? What does that look like?
Um, I think it's uh, I would describe it as a respect for the craft.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of people um, who stamp may not be like us. I mean, we have people, you go in and you got like 4 books, and
Right.
you're there for like a half an hour stamping 10 stamps and 4 books. And while there's like, 12 other people behind you waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a good stamper would realize that, okay, these people aren't doing what you're doing. And, maybe you should let them go first, especially
Right.
kids. They're impatient a lot of times. And so, they might not want to wait that long. So, and I think, obviously you don't want to, I think the worst thing you could possibly do is go in and change the date and
Hmm.
not change it back. I've seen that, a lot of times when I've gone in and people, they were there, 2 years ago and they didn't get their stamp. So now they're visiting again and like, I want to get my stamp from 2 years ago, and they change it. And then you go and you stamp and it's the wrong, you
Mm.
walk out not thinking about it. And then you go
Mm-hmm.
back and look at your book and you're like, oh man. So I think that's a horrible practice, for people to do that. And, a lot of times they'll guard the stamp and they'll watch and they're like, no, you can't change the date. So, but I mean, I think uh, that's kind of a horrible thing to do. But we actually, on our forum, we've put together kind of a stamping etiquette list of things that, you know, how to be a good stamper, and, not to harass the rangers if they don't want to go and get you a box of stamps out of the back.
Right. 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 Don't stamp and run. I think that might be on
Yeah,
there.
stamp and run. That's terrible. I
Yeah.
mean, you really should get something out of the place if you're going to, even if you've been there before,
Right.
I mean, talk to people or watch the movie. Maybe they've changed the movie since the last time you
Yeah.
were there.
Earn it a
Anything.
little.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, because so many of these visitor centers are just sort of off the side of the road, right? To be accessible, and that's great. I'm thinking about the Wrangell St. Elias National Park Visitor Center, which it's literally just off the highway. And I mean, technically it's in Wrangell St. Elias National Park. Wrangell St. Elias National Park is humongous, like
Sure.
so big. And I'm not saying you should go to all of it, but take a walk on the nature trail, because when you drive into it, you have just barely entered it. I mean, you just got there
Right.
and you have
Yeah.
not experienced it at all.
Yeah.
And it is so vast and so cool. And so you can see a slice of that by taking a short nature trail hike. And so to duck in there, stamp, and leave is just sort of, I feel like you're robbing yourself of an opportunity in a way.
Yeah. And there have been times when I've gone to places like we went to Wrangell St. Elias. We actually did a float trip on the Copper River, and we time it was kind of a time crunch. We went with we had some people pick us up at the hotel and took us out and bring us back, and we never actually drove into the visitor center because of the time. We never got to drive in and actually get the stamp. So I've been there but don't have any stamps. So
Yvonne, do you need me to? I can get you a stamp, buddy. I can do this. I can, I can
I
take on
gotta
this
go back.
mantle.
It's like you said, there's so much more to see.
Okay, but
So
but you know what? That brings up something that you remind me of. Stamp people are some of the nicest folks because we're all sort of just doing this thing. And I actually just remembered this while I was getting ready for this interview. I have a manila envelope on a desk in my office that is full of stamps that were sent to me by volunteer park rangers from Yellowstone National Park, because we went there early in the season. We were there for almost a week, but many of the park ranger stations were closed. And
mm-hmm.
so I visited all of the places, but I couldn't get the stamps. And these guys drove around the park and got me stamps and sent them to me in the mail 2 months later. Can you believe
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe that.
It was just like, they said they would. And I was like, okay, that's nice. Like, of course, whatever, right? That's very
Yeah.
kind of you to offer. And then they did. And that just, what a cool thing. People are just so great sometimes. Okay.
Yeah, and a lot
So,
of our members do that for other members too. If they're
yeah,
local to a
yeah.
park, they're like, "Oh, I missed getting my stamp. I'll get you one and send it to you."
That's
So
right. That's right. And
sure.
it's just, like why not? We're all pursuing the thing together. It's a community. So speaking of community, like I said, I must know, what do you do at a National Park Travelers Club convention?
Well, it depends on where it is. Usually, back when the club first started, the conventions were pretty small. We were lucky to have, 40, 50. I mean, they started with like, I think it was like, a dozen people. And that was the second convention. I think the first convention was even less than that. But the conventions have grown so much over the years. So now we've kind of incorporated trying to do activities at nearby parks in
Hmm.
addition to the parks that we're having host. And we'll arrange bus tours in the area or special activities. The convention's actually coming to DC this summer.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be here, and we're celebrating African American history
Okay.
as the theme for this year's convention, and we have the Mary McLeod Bethune Council House and Carter G. Woodson Home serving as our host parks. But we've got probably about uh, 5 days worth of activities going on. We've got a couple of different bus tours. We've got the Monuments by Night tour. We've got dinners. We got a big event out at Glen Echo Park, a big dinner, and they have the 1921 carousel out there. And
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so give us a lowdown on what people should do if they're hearing this and realizing that they too are now obsessed with stamps, but they have been to other parks and they have not gotten the stamp there, what do they do? Can they rectify this terrible oversight?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, you can write to the parks and they'll send you a stamp.
Hmm.
Um, I've never encountered a park that if you send them a piece of label paper and a self-addressed stamped envelope that they wouldn't send you a stamp back, and probably a bunch of other stuff. I um I did that myself a few years back when they had the 25th anniversary of the passport program. They produced all these special stamps that they gave to all the parks. And I knew the anniversary was technically only going to last a year, and the stamps were, who knows if they'd be around by the time I ever got to the park. So I did this huge kind of campaign and mailed the a label paper and a request to every park in existence. And for probably about a week, maybe 2 weeks after that, my mailbox was stuffed with
Huh.
these self-addressed stamped envelopes. And I pretty much got almost all of them.
That's great.
And they sent me all kinds of other stuff. I mean, they send you Junior Ranger stuff or patches or all kinds of stuff, brochures and whatnot. So I got like tons of mail for like 2 weeks.
That's
And I
awesome.
did it again when they came out with the centennial stamps.
Very cool.
So they're very, very, like you said, a lot of them are into stamping themselves, and they like it when people are into the program and want to know about the park. So
Yeah.
they're more than willing to send you, or, you can join the club. There's a lot
Yes.
of people who will help you out for, if you're missing
Yes.
stamps, they'll help you out. So
And we will include, of course, the club information in the show notes. So if you're looking for a way to find the National Parks Travelers Club, you totally can. Link will be there, or you can give it a Google and spiral into the obsession, just like me.
yeah,
Warning, warning. There's
yeah,
no
we've
coming out.
actually, we have someone who's our social media coordinator that's done a really great job building up our social media presence over the last couple of years. So
Yeah.
you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
yeah.
We'll include all of that stuff. There'll be just links right there for everybody. Okay, so I could nerd out about this all day long, but I don't think that people want to listen to us do that. Maybe not. I don't know. But if they do, they can check out the Travelers Club for more. But to walk us out now, we like to end our episodes just hearing about our guests' favorite outdoor gear, their most essential gear. Uh so tell us, what is your favorite gear? And you know what, Yvonne, it would be okay if your favorite gear was your park stamp book.
It's actually not. I got into a few years ago getting the hiking medallions,
Hmm.
collecting the hiking medallions. So I love to take my, have one of those hiking sticks.
Yeah.
And when we do hikes, go to Shenandoah National Park or something like that around here and do hikes, I love to show off my hiking stick. So I kind of find it's a good caulking piece, and you meet people on the trails and stuff, and they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
I
Very
love to
cool.
have that.
Very cool. Do you have a piece of gear that you just find to be extremely essential? That just you don't leave home without it, and without this you die.
Yeah, I really love those little, not really, they're not really carabiners, but they're kind of like carabiners. Those little things that you can, they have like a little loop that you can stick on your water bottle and just hang
Sure.
it off the side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a
Carabiner.
lot of
That's
times
a
when I'm out, you're out in the car and you drive to somewhere and they're like, oh, you got a hiking trail, and then you don't have anywhere to carry water or anything.
right.
So
Yep.
I never leave anywhere without one of those. I would keep them
Yeah.
in the car and stuff. So it's really
Great.
great.
So perfect. Okay. Final thing. We like to leave our episodes imagining ourselves in our guests' favorite outdoor space, in their favorite outdoor moment. So just walk us out. Like if you close your eyes and you think about a moment that means a lot to you outside, it's just something you like to go back to. Where are you and what are you doing?
I have to circle back to what I said in the beginning. I
Hmm.
like being out on the ocean. I mean, when you're out there and you just, the being away from the noise of everything is so peaceful. And so I just love to like lay out on the deck of a ship and just watch the stars go by and things like that. It's just really mellow, and it's I find it really relaxing.
Oh, that sounds relaxing. Love it. Yvonne, thank you so much for talking to us today about park stamps and being on Humans Outside.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this week's episode of the Humans Outside podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, give us a little love and leave a rating and review to make it easier for others to find the podcast too. And by supporting us on Patreon, you get access to exclusive supporter-only benefits while making sure we can keep the podcast going. A huge, huge thank you to our current supporters. Until next time, we'll see you out there.